The rain fell gently on the streets of downtown Atlanta, not heavy enough to soak, but just enough to hush the city's usual buzz. Every droplet that slid down the foggy glass windows of Joe's Classic Diner carried a strange weight that morning, an almost eerie stillness, as though the world were holding its breath. Inside, the hum of the jukebox murmured an old Sam Cooke tune that barely rose above the sizzle of bacon and the clatter of coffee cups. The place looked like it always did. Chrome. Counters reflecting the dull gray sky, booths perfectly aligned, red leather polished to a smooth sheen. But today, something unspoken filled the air. Something about to unfold. The door creaked open with the soft jingle of the bell, and in stepped a tall, older black man in a brown overcoat. The way he moved, slow, deliberate, carrying the kind of silence earned over years of endurance, made heads turn for a second, then return to their coffee cups. He had a Braves cap pulled low, a salt and pepper beard slightly scruffy, and a look in his eyes that said he'd seen too much and said too little. He wasn't here to cause a stir. He was here to be invisible. But invisibility had a strange way of revealing the truth. He glanced around, eyes lingering on the counter at the back corner, and made his way there with quiet confidence. Not many people noticed the way he looked at the tables, the menu board, the worn spots on the floor by the register. But he noticed everything, because everything in this place once came from his hands. His name was Douglas Freeman, a name whispered in business circles and community centers alike. To some, he was a symbol of hope, a man who rose from a childhood of poverty, served in the U.S. Marines, and turned a tiny waffle stand into a multi-million-dollar diner empire. To others, he was just a name on a plaque near the restrooms. But today, in this very diner, his first and most cherished location, he was just Doug, a customer, an unknown, a mystery. No one recognized him, and that's exactly how he wanted it. He'd received 3 anonymous complaints about this location in the last 6 weeks. 2 from customers, 1 from an employee. Complaints of cold food, colder attitudes, and a sense that something warm and human had gone missing. But Doug didn't believe in acting on rumors. He believed in seeing things with his own eyes. A young cashier looked up from her register, twirling a pen between her fingers, and gave him a barely-there smile. "Morning," she said. Her name tag read Lisa, her hair pulled into a high ponytail, her tone cheerful but mechanical. "Good morning," Doug replied, settling onto the stool at the farthest end of the counter. She nodded and turned back toward Dee, her co-worker, an older woman with tired eyes and a frayed apron. Her name tag said Kendra. The two were whispering now, giggling about something. Doug's ears perked up. "What can I get you?" Lisa asked, glancing back at him with a plastic smile. "Turkey club sandwich," he said, setting the menu aside. "And a sweet tea." "Thank you." "Sure thing." She called the order out, then leaned back toward Kendra. The two huddled closer, sharing something under their breath, and for a moment, Doug could feel it, like an invisible shift in the room, like laughter aimed at someone not in on the joke. He wasn't suspicious yet, but he was listening. The jukebox played on. The steam from his tea curled up like a lazy ribbon, and he sat still, watching the reflection of the 2 women in the chrome surface of the coffee machine. And then, he heard it. Not clearly, but enough. "Lord, he looks like he slept in that coat," Lisa murmured. Kendra smirked. "Probably did." Doug's hand paused halfway to his cup. He kept his expression neutral, but inside, something tightened. "He better not ask for extra napkins," Lisa snorted under her breath. "I'm not in the mood to babysit broke old men today," Kendra giggled. "You see how he looked around? Probably scoping out the free sugar packets." Doug said nothing, but a storm began to brew behind his calm eyes. They were talking about him, not knowing he was their employer, not knowing he'd poured his soul into this place. not knowing that the man they saw as a weary old stranger had once worked 3 jobs to build a future they now stood on. He took a sip of his tea slowly, as though the warmth could melt away the sting of their words. But it didn't. His sandwich arrived, plopped in front of him without ceremony. "Here you go," Lisa said, not meeting his eyes. "Thank you," he replied gently. She didn't respond. Doug picked up half the sandwich, took a bite, and let the flavor settle. It was good. The recipe hadn't changed. The bacon was still crisp, the turkey still fresh, the aioli still tangy and rich, but the taste was hollow now, overshadowed by something bitter. Not the food, the service, the humanity. He looked around. The diner, 2 elderly men chatting over pancakes, a mother with a toddler eating quietly, a college student tapping on a laptop. They were all here for warmth, comfort, a safe corner of the world in a chaotic life. And yet the very spirit of that comfort had been mocked just minutes ago. Doug finished his sandwich, left a $20 bill on the counter, more than double the cost, and walked out without a word. The bell chimed as the door closed behind him. He sat in his car for a long time, letting the rain patter on the windshield, his hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring him. He wasn't angry in the way most people would be. Not raging. Not ready to fire people on the spot. He was heartbroken because he'd built this diner to be more than a business. It was supposed to be a haven, a place where people mattered, where dignity was served alongside pancakes, where a man with nothing but change in his pocket could still feel like someone. And now, he had just been treated like no one. He could have called the district manager that very minute, could have ordered terminations, called HR, raised hell, but instead, Doug did what he always did when life knocked the wind out of him. He paused, he breathed, and he planned. This wasn't just about 2 employees with bad manners. This was a crack in the very foundation of what he'd built. And if there was a crack, Doug knew better than anyone. You had to fix it from the inside, not just slap a coat of paint on it. 3 days passed, and on the morning of the 4th, a black SUV pulled up to the side of Joe's classic diner just before the breakfast rush. The rain had stopped, the clouds had thinned, and Douglas Freeman stepped out, not in disguise this time. No overcoat, no worn cap. This time, he wore the suit that matched the weight of his name. He walked in, tall, proud, and as composed as a preacher delivering a sermon. The second he entered, the energy shifted. The manager, Sheila, rushed out. From behind the kitchen doors, her face tightening with nerves. "Mr. Freeman, we didn't expect—" "I know," he said gently. "Please don't alert anyone else. Just gather your staff in the break room. I'd like to speak with everyone." Her face went pale, but she obeyed. In less than 5 minutes, the employees were gathered, some curious, some concerned. Lisa and Kendra stood near the back, whispering. Doug stepped in, looked around, and let the silence settle. "I know most of you don't know me in person," he began, "but you've probably seen my name on the plaques, on the training manuals, on the checks." A murmur rippled through the group. "My name is Douglas Freeman. I founded this diner over 25 years ago, started with a rusted-out food truck and a dream. Some days I flipped pancakes in the morning and scrubbed grease traps at night. Some nights I slept in the back room because I couldn't afford rent. I built this place with my hands, with my heart." His voice was calm, but there was a fire behind his words. "I believe this place should be more than just a restaurant. It should be a refuge, for anyone. Everyone. I didn't care if you were rich or poor, young or old, white, black, or anything in between. I just wanted one place in this world where you could walk in and feel like you mattered." The room was silent now. No whispers. No sideways glances. 3 days ago I came here. Not as myself. I wore a coat I used to wear when I was broke and hungry and trying to survive. I sat right there, he said, pointing at the counter. And I listened. Now, eyes darted, faces flushed, Lisa's hands trembled. I heard things I never thought I'd hear in one of my diners. I was mocked, disrespected, judged, not because I was rude or demanding, but because I looked like I didn't matter. He paused, his voice low. That's not just unkind. That's unacceptable. Lisa's eyes welled up. Kendra's face turned, pale. But I didn't come here to fire anyone. I came here to give people a chance to learn, to grow, to be better. Doug walked forward, slow and steady. I've made arrangements for every employee to receive training, not just on how to serve food, but how to serve people, how to lead with kindness, how to see the soul in someone before you see the coat they're wearing. He stopped in front of Lisa and Kendra. I believe people can change, because I've seen it. I've lived it. And just like that, without rage or threats, Douglas Freeman did what he'd always done best. He led with heart, and he planted a seed, one that no one in that room would forget. The break room was quiet even after Douglas Freeman left. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The air felt too thick for breathing. Lisa stood stiff as a statue, her mind replaying every word she'd said just days earlier. Each snide remark, each eye roll, each careless whisper behind the counter hit her like shrapnel. She hadn't known. How could she have known? And yet that didn't matter now. She had judged a man for a coat, not for his character. Mocked someone she didn't know, someone who turned out to be the very person responsible for the roof over her head and the paycheck in her pocket. Kendra sat on the edge of a metal folding chair, wringing her apron with shaking hands. She was older than most of the staff, the one who always knew how to clock in before everyone, how to spot a double order slip, how to refill the ketchup without spilling. But now she felt like a rookie. Like a child who had been caught stealing something far more precious than candy, someone's dignity. Sheila, the manager, broke the silence first, her voice trembling, eyes glassy. Mr. Freeman isn't a man who lectures people. He's a man who believes in something. That's rarer than you think. No one answered. Then Lisa stood up abruptly, her face flushed and her chest tight. I need to talk to him. Please. I have to. I didn't mean. Meaning it or not doesn't undo it, Sheila said gently. But he's not the type to slam the door. If he offered a chance, take it and earn it. Lisa blinked back tears. Her throat burned, not with embarrassment, but with something deeper, remorse. Kendra reached out and took her hand. It surprised both of them. Let's not waste the chance, Kendra whispered. 2 hours later, Lisa found herself sitting at her kitchen table with a notebook open, a pen in her hand, and a mess of emotions she didn't know how to name. She'd spent most of her life surviving, not reflecting. But today, she felt a pull to look inward. So she wrote, Dear Mr. Freeman. The words came slow at first, then faster, then flooded. She told him she hadn't meant to hurt anyone, that she had forgotten what her job was really supposed to be, not pressing buttons or counting bills, but caring for people. She wrote about her mother, who worked as a housekeeper, all her life and taught her to always smile at strangers. She wrote about how ashamed she was that she'd forgotten that lesson. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't think she deserved it yet. But she promised one thing. From this day forward, I will treat every customer like they might be somebody's Mr. Freeman. Because the truth is, they probably are. She folded the letter and set it aside. Meanwhile, back at the diner, something subtle had started to shift. Sheila, true to her word, launched the training Doug had requested. But it wasn't the usual dull slideshow and robotic customer service tips. It was different, human, raw. She brought in a local pastor who'd once been homeless, a former teacher who'd fallen into poverty after cancer, a retired nurse who served meals at the shelter every Sunday. They didn't teach technique. They told stories. They spoke about what it felt like to be invisible, ignored, condescended to. They reminded the staff that sometimes the man with the wrinkled coat was the one who paid the bills, and sometimes he wasn't. But either way, he still deserved to be treated with kindness. Lisa listened with her heart cracked wide open. One morning, she noticed a young woman come in holding the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been older than 4. They looked tired, hungry. The mother dug through her purse with shaking hands, eyes darting like she was trying to count invisible dollars. Lisa walked around the counter, knelt down, and looked the boy in the eye. "Hey there, buddy." She smiled. "You like pancakes?" The boy nodded timidly. Lisa turned to his mother. "They're on me today. You don't worry about a thing." The woman tried to protest, but Lisa wouldn't let her. "Someone once gave me a second chance. This is mine to pass along." Behind the counter, Kendra watched in silence. That night, Kendra sat on her own porch, lit only by the soft flicker of a street lamp. She had been working in diners since before Lisa was born. She'd seen good bosses and terrible ones, seen people lie, cheat, and steal, but she'd never seen someone like Douglas Freeman, a man who gave you the rope to climb back up even after you'd slipped. She closed her eyes, remembering the first time she felt invisible, standing in a hospital waiting room, 22 years old, 6 months pregnant, being told by a nurse that the father of her baby had died in a car crash. No eye contact, no kindness, just facts, cold and clinical. She had never forgotten that feeling, and yet here she was, years later, giving someone else that same feeling, without even realizing it. She reached for her phone and typed a text to Lisa. "Coffee. 9 a.m. tomorrow." "We need to talk," Lisa responded within seconds. "I'll be there." The next morning, over steaming mugs and an awkward silence, Kendra finally spoke. "We were wrong," she said. "And not just to him, to a lot of people. Maybe we got tired. Maybe we got used to it. But we lost something." Lisa nodded slowly. "We did." Kendra reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I wrote a letter, too. It's not much. But I needed to say it." They sat in silence again, the kind that comes when two people realize they're standing at the edge of something bigger than guilt, something closer to grace. And then, something remarkable happened. Douglas Freeman came back, no announcement, no press. Just walked in one afternoon wearing a simple sweater and jeans and asked for a seat near the window. This time, Lisa didn't hesitate. She smiled, genuinely, and walked over. "Welcome back, Mr. Freeman." He looked up, surprised but calm. "Thank you, Lisa." "I'd like to buy you lunch," she said, nervous but firm. "You don't have to do that." "I know," she said, "but I want to." He smiled. She brought him his favorite sandwich, sweet tea perfectly chilled, napkins folded just so. And when he took the first bite, he paused, not because of the taste, but because of the silence. There was no laughter behind the counter, no gossip, just warmth, respect, change. After he finished, Lisa walked over with an envelope in her hand. "I wrote you something," she said. "No rush to read it." Doug nodded and took it. Then Kendra appeared beside her. "Me too." Doug looked between them, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I didn't come back expecting anything." "We know," Lisa said. "But you gave us a mirror. The least we can do is face what we saw." He held the 2 envelopes in his hand, feeling their weight. Not heavy, but meaningful. "I always believed this place could change lives," he said softly. "Didn't expect it to be yours." "It changed us," Kendra said, "but only because you showed us how." Doug stood, looked around at the quiet hum of customers being served with smiles, orders being called with care, and something that hadn't existed in that room just days ago. Compassion. "I think it's time," he said, folding the letters and placing them in his jacket. "Time I made this the model diner for our entire chain." Lisa blinked. What do you mean? I mean, he said, turning toward the door. The rest of our locations need to learn from you now. And then he walked out. No spotlight. No applause. Just the soft chime of the bell as the door closed behind him. But this time, Lisa didn't see a man in a wrinkled coat. She saw a leader, a man who reminded her that kindness wasn't just an option, it was a calling. She turned to Kendra and whispered, "He gave us the greatest tip anyone ever could." "What's that?" Kendra asked. "A second chance." 3 weeks after Douglas Freeman quietly walked out of the diner for the second time, the story had already begun to write itself in whispers and wide eyes. But it didn't start with headlines. It started with how the regulars were greeted at the door. It started when Lisa helped carry a tray to an elderly man's table without being asked, because she remembered how his hand had trembled the last time he tried it himself. It started when Kendra stepped in to cover for a struggling new hire, offering reassurance instead of rolled eyes. And it started when Sheila posted a handwritten sign by the register that read, "Every person has a story. Hear it before you judge it." That little sign, scrawled in black marker and taped slightly crooked, did more than decorate the wall. It reset the heartbeat of the place. Then came the unexpected letter. A corporate envelope arrived one crisp Thursday morning, addressed to Sheila, but bearing the golden seal of Freeman Hospitality Group. She opened it with cautious hands. Inside, a single sheet of thick paper bore a typed message and a signature at the bottom. Due to the remarkable turnaround and team transformation at our Eastwood Diner location, this branch is being designated our national pilot for the Freeman Kindness Initiative. You will receive full funding to implement training, mentorship, and community outreach programs. Let this be the first diner where hearts are fed as well as stomachs. Douglas Freeman. Sheila read it twice before her knees gave out and she sank into the office chair behind her. She called an all-staff meeting that evening. They gathered in the dining room, some still in aprons, some rubbing tired eyes after double shifts, but all curious. There was an electricity in the air that hadn't existed since the holidays. Sheila stood by the coffee machine, letter trembling in her hand, and read it aloud. By the time she reached the last sentence, Lisa had tears streaming silently down her face. Kendra was gripping the edge of a booth with both hands. No one said a word. Not yet. But in that moment, something intangible passed between them. A shared truth they couldn't unknow. They weren't just employees anymore. They were the seed of something bigger. It began the very next morning. The Freeman Kindness Initiative kicked off with little fanfare, but tremendous soul. Every staff member had 1 hour per week carved out of their schedule for community outreach, paid time. They were encouraged to volunteer at shelters, check in on regulars they hadn't seen, or even just sit and listen to customers who needed a friend. It wasn't a gimmick. It was a shift. The first act came from a dishwasher named Eli, who quietly started leaving brown paper bags of food near the bus stop where a homeless man often sat. He didn't tell anyone. But Sheila noticed the receipt voids and said nothing until she slipped him a thank you note inside his locker. Next came Mari, one of the line cooks, who began packing leftover pastries and muffins into a cooler at night and dropping them off at the women's center on her way home. Then, something miraculous happened. The customers noticed. At first, it was subtle. A regular named Mr. Alvarez began tipping double, not because he had more money, but because he said the diner felt different now. He called it his soul breakfast. Then came letters. Real letters, handwritten by customers who had felt seen, heard, and cared for. One woman shared that Lisa had unknowingly talked her out of a panic attack with nothing more than a calm voice and warm coffee. Another wrote about Kendra's quiet advice on dealing with grief after losing her mother. Doug heard about every one of them. He never asked for reports, but the staff started sending them anyway. Not because they had to, because they wanted him to know. You started something. Lisa had taken it one step further. each night. Before closing, she sat at a tiny table in the back corner and scribbled thoughts into a worn journal she now kept in her purse. She called it her gratitude ledger. She never missed a night. In one entry, she wrote, "Tonight, a man came in with paint under his nails and sadness in his eyes. I asked how his day was. He told me it was the first time anyone had asked in weeks. I brought him an extra piece of pie. He left smiling. That smile stayed with me more than any paycheck ever did." One late Friday evening, the bell above the front door chimed, and a man in a navy blazer walked in holding a camera. Sheila approached him with her usual smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm with Channel 12, he said. "We've heard some things. About a diner, about a team, about a man named Freeman." Lisa looked up from behind the counter, her heart skipping. "He's not here," she said. "But his story is," the reporter replied. The segment aired 3 nights later. Titled, "The Diner That Chose Kindness," it featured shots of the team laughing during service, helping customers with bags, and a moment where Kendra sat across from. A teenage girl just listening. There was no drama, no scandal, just people. Being good. It went viral within 24 hours. Thousands of comments poured in. One read, "In a world where fast food often means fast people, this place slows down to serve souls. We need more of this." Another, "I'm driving 4 hours just to eat here. That's how hungry I am for kindness." And then, a message came through the contact form on the diner's website. It was short, just 4 words, but it made Sheila's heart leap. "I'll be there tomorrow. Doug." The next morning, the team cleaned harder than usual, not because they were worried about appearances, but because they were excited, nervous, grateful. When the bell finally chimed and Douglas Freeman stepped through the door, they didn't just see their boss. They saw the man who believed in their best before they ever did. He walked toward the counter where Lisa was waiting. This time, she didn't fumble or flush. She smiled, wide and proud. "Welcome home," he paused. "Home," he echoed softly. "That's what it feels like." Kendra emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "We kept the booth by the window for you," he chuckled. "Didn't have to, but thank you." He sat down. They didn't swarm him. Didn't ask questions. They simply served him with the dignity and care he had shown them first. When his plate was cleared and his tea glass empty, he stood slowly and tapped the edge of the table with his fingertips. "I wasn't planning on saying anything," he began, "but I would regret it if I left this room without telling you what you've done." Everyone stilled. He continued. "When I came here undercover, I wasn't looking to test people. I was looking for something to believe in again. Because somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten why I started this company at all." He paused, emotion catching in his throat. "I remembered it here." No one breathed. "You didn't just change how this diner runs. You changed how I run. And because of that, we're taking this initiative company-wide. Every Freeman location will learn what you've lived." Sheila clutched her hands to her chest. Lisa covered her mouth with both hands. Kendra wiped her eyes openly. Doug turned. To Lisa. "You once said in your letter that every person might be somebody's Mr. Freeman. You were right. But I'm telling you now, you are someone's Mr. Freeman." Then he looked at the staff. "All of you are." A single clap broke the silence. Then another. Soon the room filled with applause, not polite, but soul-deep. Lisa walked to the back room, her heart too full, her steps too shaky. She needed a minute. Inside, she sat down and opened her journal. "Dear Mr. Freeman," she wrote, "you gave us your name. We gave it meaning." She closed the book and smiled through tears. Outside, customers lined up by the door, drawn not just by the food, but by something much rarer. They came hungry, yes, but they left full, in ways no menu could explain. And somewhere, In a corner booth with sunlight pouring in, a once undercover boss watched his legacy become something more than profit, more than success. He watched it become hope. And hope, as it turns out, tastes a lot like a sandwich served with a smile.